Hi, and welcome to another edition of Birds in the News, where we talk about birds in the news. Since the last episode of Birds in the News, birding has had some tangential connection to some very big events in the news, namely the Black Lives Matter movement and the quest for social justice and inclusivity. The specific news item that we're talking about is a social media trend that happened in June, where Black women who bird let each other know that they were out there and what they were finding. I thought that was really great because it's people celebrating inclusiveness and birding at the same time, and like, what better combination? That article comes to us from Audubon, and there will be a link to it in the description, as well as a link to some of the featured birders because they're doing some really interesting stuff. Our next Birds in the News item comes to us from Alaska. There was a bald eagle that had some wire wrapped around its leg, and it was caught 40 feet up in a spruce tree. Some people noticed it and called in, so a responder from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service climbed up the tree and untangled the bird. So that bird is now at the Alaska Raptor Center for observation. And all of this happened, this bald eagle being rescued, on the 4th of July. So this is the U.S. national bird being rescued on U.S. Independence Day. What more patriotic thing to do than to save a bald eagle? Our next Birds in the News article comes from The Guardian in the UK. And there was a common cuckoo. This is another cuckoo news item. It flew from Mongolia to southern Africa, which is 26,000 kilometers round trip. It did it in 1 year. It had a satellite tag on it, so there were researchers and fans watching it the whole way. So this cuckoo became famous because it flew a ridiculously long distance just to get to a feeding ground and then back to Mongolia, which is where it started for another breeding season. The bird is named Anan after a local river, and it was the only bird out of the original tracking group that made it all the way back to the tracking site with its tracker intact. The researchers that were studying it think that it migrated 26,000 kilometers round trip for food, maybe some caterpillars or something, but the reason for that long migration is unknown. And after all that work of flying 26,000 kilometers, Anan's work is just getting started because now he has to start defending a territory and start another breeding season before he does another migration this year. Common cuckoos seem to be common in the news. There's been a story about a common cuckoo both times now, so we might have to start a segment called Cuckoos in the News. We'll have to come up with some kind of sound effect or something. I'll put it here. Nice. Our next article in Birds in the News comes from Sportsnet. The Toronto Blue Jays, see, Blue Jays is the bird connection here. The Major League Baseball has released their 2020 season, and it's going to be extremely reduced. They're only going to play 60 games instead of 162. And the Toronto Blue Jays are worth mentioning because they're the only Canadian team in Major League Baseball. So they have a unique issue. They have to cross the border, and right now the border is closed. And I got the impression from the article that they could get across to play, but one of the big questions that is still up in the air is, where are they going to play their home games? Because other teams won't have access to their home stadium because they can't cross the border. Major League Baseball is trying to figure out what stadium sports look like in this new world going forward. So hopefully the Blue Jays can find a way forward and participate in this year's Major League season. Our next article comes from the Good News Network, which honestly, thank you for existing, Good News Network. They're reporting that the world's rarest wading bird is making a comeback as their population rises by 30%. The population of kaki is up 30% to 169 individuals thanks to a breeding program. The New Zealand Department of Conservation is saving this endemic species. Endemic means that it's native to New Zealand and it's not native to any other part of the world. So these 169 individuals, that's it. That's all there is. They're combining a captive breeding program with habitat restoration and releasing individuals in the hopes that they'll restore their population in its natural environment. It might sound hopeless because there's only 169 individual birds, but conservation programs like this have worked in the past. The wild turkey was saved this way through a captive breeding program and reintroduction to its natural environment. The wild turkey's doing great now. And the California condor was also saved in a similar way. So best of luck to the New Zealand Department of Conservation. Keep up the good work. In more domestic news, Winneshiek County, Iowa was the newest bird-friendly Iowa community, a designation that was created in 2017 to recognize cities that were doing good things for birds, like preserving habitat and restoring forests. This designation is local to Iowa. You can't get it like bird-friendly Iowa community. You can't get it anywhere else, but it's local efforts like this that inspire local conservation, and every big conservation issue has to be solved with lots of small local actions. So I think this program is totally great. Great job to the Bird-Friendly Iowa Community Program. One last story with birds in the news is from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It says the latest edition of the Federal Duck Stamp is available for purchase. The Federal Duck Stamp is a program where you can buy this $25 stamp. You can't use it for postage, it's just a stamp, and that money goes towards buying and preserving wetlands for waterfowl to live in. Out of the $25, 98% of that goes towards buying and preserving wetlands. The stamp is required in many states. I love this. It's required in many states to have a valid hunting permit. So in order to hunt waterfowl, for example, you have to buy a $25 stamp and affix it to your permit. So you're actually contributing to the preservation of the species that you're hunting. So that's pretty neat, but you don't have to hunt. You can just buy the stamp and use it to support waterfowl. So if you want, you can buy it through the US Postal Service website, or I made a short link that you can use. You can go to biobush.tv/duckstamp, and I'll make sure that's updated to wherever the link is to buy the latest federal duck stamp. And that wraps up this edition of Birds in the News. There's actually been a lot of bird news since the last time. I didn't know going into this that there would be so many real news stories that really involved birds, but it turns out that there are. If you're excited about the next Birds in the News, I don't know when the next episode will be because we have a full schedule for the next while, but you can subscribe and then you'll know for sure when the next episodes of Birds in the News come out. You can also continue learning about birds on this channel by watching one of the videos that are flying around here. Thanks for stopping by this week to learn what makes life awesome.